Hi, everybody. Today on Michael's Design Show, we're going to talk about how to do a cover design mock up. Obviously, a cover design is a very important piece, not only for the final book, but also for marketing plans and marketing concepts, because the cover, more than anything else, becomes the visual identity of your project. So, I want to talk a little bit about the thinking that goes into cover designs and then share with you a really cool tool that you can use called Canva that you can use to create free cover designs with pretty good results. And I think it's not quite a professional grade tool, but it's not bad. So anyway, that's where we're going in this video. I want to talk a little bit about the process of cover design. One of the questions that people ask about publishing is how much control does the author have of the cover design? And the answer, like so many things in publishing, is it depends. If you self-publish, obviously you have almost complete control. You could design your own cover. You could hire your own designer and work with them. You would have a lot of creative control if you were self-published. If you're working with a publisher, it can vary from a lot of input to some input to not much input at all. It really depends. And in some cases, that's something that would be negotiated as part of the contract. If it's particularly important to you that you have authorial control and input into the cover design, I would have that conversation with the editor before you sign a contract and maybe make sure that that's written in there, because many publishers like to just work with the designers that they're comfortable working with, and sometimes they'll just show the author a finished design or maybe two finished designs and say pick one. In my own experience, I worked last year with a pretty big time publisher, Pearson, to publish a series of books in the Little Brown Handbook franchise. And I had some input. All of the books on the list last year were designed with a similar look and feel. And this is what's up on the screen right now. This is where we started. I was working with a designer and cover illustrator whose name is Christopher DiLorenzo. And Christopher did a number of sketches. And I got to choose some of those sketches and then coach him a little bit. I didn't get to say, no, I don't want a sketch, I want a photograph. So there were certain parameters that we worked with. And anyway, this was after having a couple of initial conversations. You can see up here in the corner is this language that says a flowing collage of people reading, writing, and collaborating. Those were based on some of the initial conversations where I said I would like to have something like a flowing collage of people reading, writing, and collaborating. Most handbook covers are really boring. Sometimes they'll have a photograph of like a laptop and a stack of books, blah. So we wanted to do something a little more fun and playful. So this is where we started. I think this is a really nice sketch. And we went through 2 or 3 iterations on this sketch, and that's the final cover of the book. So you can see there's some additional elements that weren't there in the initial sketch. So I did have some input into that final design, and I'm pretty happy with the results. I think it looks pretty much a lot cooler, a lot more contemporary design than you would often expect for a college textbook, particularly for the Little Brown Handbook franchise, which is a fairly traditional, conventional kind of series. So Christopher DiLorenzo did the illustration, and then the cover designer was a design studio called Pentagram. So Pearson pulled out all the stops and spent some money to get that cover design. So I didn't actually do the design. Again, I just had some kind of consultation. So that's a little snapshot of what the process can look like. I was very happy as an author, again, because I thought it was more interesting, more graphically inventive, a little more playful, and a little less stuffy than many of the previous books in the series. So I was happy with the results in this case. So let's say you are working with a publisher and you have some input into the cover design. How is that going to work? How is that going to work for us in the class? Well, we're going to start with this thing, which is Project 9, called the Cover Design Memo and Mockup. And what the Cover Design Memo does, you can read the instructions in blue type. It basically prompts you to think about what you want before you start just throwing together a design. So it captures some of the basic information. What is the title of your book? In this case, I'm going to design a cover on the fly, if this works, for the book project that I've been working on this semester that I've shared with you in various stages, called Multimedia with a Purpose. So that's my title. The subtitle is Improve Learning and Connect with Students. The trim size is 5 by 7 inches. Again, that's pretty small and a little bit squarish for a book. Our primary audience is educators in higher education who teach online. And then there's some additional details from the proposal: online instructors from novice to expert, instructional designers, and technology staff. But primarily, it's a professional book for educators in higher education who teach online. It's part of a series called Thrive Online, as I've mentioned to you before. So then the interesting part of this project is here: visual story. Now, we've thought about the verbal story of your book. Now you have to think about the visual story. What story do you want to show and capture in your cover image? And so what I wrote was this: the cover should suggest professionalism and the idea of humanizing and connecting learning. In keeping with similar stylist titles, the cover should be mostly abstract with a graphic image in the background. The type does most of the work. We want to avoid images of laptops and other gadgets. Any images should suggest the idea of connection and community and not technology. The reason for that is so many books about online teaching put the technology in the foreground. The whole theme of our book is that multimedia is a way, as we say right here, to improve learning and connect with students. So that's the visual story. Multimedia, improve learning and connect with students. It's not about the technology. It's not about the gadgets. It's about the idea of connecting and humanizing learning. So I said that the primary illustration will be an abstract graphic. I'll show you why I said that in a minute. The visual should suggest the idea of connection and community. The typographical elements, what is the type going to say? Obviously, you're going to have your title and your subtitle and your author's name on the cover. Series typefaces are all caps serif fonts for main titles and sans serif for subtitles. Author names are set over a color block that bleeds to the edge of the cover. Now, let me show you what I mean by that. I went to the Stylus Publishing website to look at what other books in the series look like, and this is what I found. I don't know, you can't see these, they're not very big, but it doesn't matter. They're super plain, and I believe that they're super plain because they actually have not designed the covers yet. These books are in production now, so none of the books in the Thrive Online series have yet to be published. They have yet been published. So I think these are just mock-ups. The type is centered. It's not very well designed. I don't think those are what the final books are going to look like. So that's not particularly helpful. So I said, all right, well, let's look at what other books related to online teaching published by Stylus look like. And I found this one. And I found that this is pretty reflective of most of the other books that they have published related to online teaching and learning. So here's where I got the information that I put in my cover. You can see in my cover memo, Project 9, where I said it's mostly an abstract graphic. So you can see there's no photograph. It's just this orange and yellow image in the background that's kind of a graphic design that doesn't really mean anything. The type, you can notice high impact practices in online education. It's block cap, flush left here, and then flush right over here. Block cap, that's a very traditional serif font with the little N being lowercase and italics. And then here is the subtitle, Research and Best Practices. That's block capital also, but notice it's a different font. It's a sans serif font. It's white against the background. And then here we have the author's names against this purple block. And when I said the word bleed, that means that it goes all the way to the edge. And in fact, the color ink would extend off the edge of the page so that when at the printing press, when they trim the edge of the page, the purple goes all the way to the end. So I'm basically going to use this cover image as a template or a model for what I'm going to do. So I've done some thinking about what I want the cover to look like. I've looked at other similar covers by the publisher, found an image that I like that I'm going to use as a model. Now what do I do? All right, I'm going to go back here, make sure I've got my cover design memo ready to go because I'm going to copy and paste some of this information from here onto my design. I'm going to grab my author names while I'm at it. So I went ahead and typed the author names in here as well so that when I go to actually design the cover, I don't have to type all this stuff. I can just copy and paste into the Canva design. So I have my type ready to go. This is all the type that will appear on the cover: title, subtitle, author names. And then I found an image. And you can do this. You can just do a Google image search. I have a subscription to a thing called Storyblocks, which is like stock images and stock photos. And I found this image, which I really like. I like the color palette. They're very warm earth tones with some nice chartreuse kind of green. And the circles and the lines to me really suggest the idea of like online learning, but in a non-techie way. It suggests the idea of like flows and cycle, and the idea that this is kind of an abstract way of representing the idea of community, right? Different people connecting and overlapping and linking in circles. So I decided this was a pretty cool image. It would work. It's pretty. White type would stand out pretty nicely against it. So I'm going to use that as my graphic. So I have my type and I have my graphic all queued up and ready to go. And then we're going to go to Canva. Some of you may have heard of Canva before. It's just www.canva.com. It's free. You'll need to set up an account using your UALR or whatever email you want. Doesn't really matter. And once you get in here, it looks like this. Now, I've done some designs before, so some of the things that I've played around with appear on the bottom. But you notice you can create all kinds of things. You can create social media, slide presentations, posters, Facebook covers, flyers, Instagram posts, Facebook blog banner, card, and of course, book covers. So you can see here, we can go to click on Create a Design, and we want to design a book cover. Let's see, where's book covers? Book cover. Now over on the left here in this sort of tray, there are a whole bunch of templates. And these templates are actually pretty nice. And for the purposes of making a mock-up, I think they work quite well. I'm just going to scroll through here and find one that looks pretty close. You can see there's a lot. Really nice templates. So again, you can create something that looks pretty professional without having to be a designer. So I'm going to say, I'm really doing this on the fly. I'm going to pick this one as a starting point. So the first thing I did here was use this blue button to upload an image so that I have this background. Now I want to get rid of the old background. How do I do that? Let's see. Okay, it took me a minute to figure out how to do that, but I went over here to Uploads and then selected, let's see, Templates, Uploads. Okay, I got my own image dropped in the background and replaced the old one. That was a little trickier than I thought it would be, and I'm actually not entirely sure how I actually did it, but I did. So we've got the image in there. Now I want to get rid of, I'm going to make this block a lot smaller and move it to the right of the edge. So now I'm going to put my title in here. Go back over here, grab this. Now I want this to be a pretty traditional, that looks about right. Now I want to make it white, and I'm going to make it bigger. Okay, I've been playing around and hacking my way through the Canva interface, and I managed to come up with something that I'm pretty happy with. I used this font called Alegria SC, which is a block cap font for my main heading, and then I used Alegria Sans, which is a related font. It's kind of a similar look, but it's a sans serif font, and then again the same down here. in caps lowercase for the author's names. Notice that the author names are flush right. It's usually a good idea to avoid centered type for the most part because it becomes boring. So I have the subtitle flush left, the main title is kind of centered, and this is off to the right. So this is by no means a final publishable design, but if I wanted to promote the book on social media before I had a final design, I could certainly use this. I actually might want to make the type a little bigger to do that because, of course, as you squish this down to Facebook size or postage stamp size, it's going to get a little bit harder to read. So if I was going to use this cover mock-up for social media purposes, I would probably play around with the type and make it a little bigger. But by just doing some dragging and dropping, the main things you need to work with here, you start with a template, find one you like, then you use these elements. There's all photos and graphics, and you can just insert or drag those shapes and gradients and lines and all kinds of stuff onto your canvas over here to the right. And then to add text, you can add heading, subheading, and then adjust the type over here when this menu comes up when you double click on the type. So I think you'll be able to find your way through the Canva interface. And then I'm going to change the name of this file and call it multimedia, obviously, because that's my title of my project. And then I ultimately want to download this as a PDF. So I download my final version, and then I can post that downloaded PDF in my final course portfolio, and I can use it for Project 8. So, of course, now it's trying to sell me their advanced version. Here's the PDF. I'm going to drag it to my desktop, open that up. Whoops, it's big, fit one page. Not too bad for just doing it on the fly while I was talking and working with their templates. So that's how you can use Canva. I think you'll get the hang of it pretty fast. Just remember to do that final download to get the PDF file that you can keep and use as part of your portfolio. All right. Thanks for coming to Michael's Design Show. Thanks for listening.